Good evening. Welcome to another Mothman-podcast, your number one source for paranormal investigations. I'm Daryl, your host, and with me is...
I'm Ann, your co-host.
And we're hoping that you enjoyed tonight's podcast. It's going to be exciting, and we're going to get right into the program. So, with that being said, I want to introduce a voice that you'll recognize that we've missed for a little while, and she's going to be back with us for a few episodes, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Amanda.
Hi, Mothman fans. Good to be back.
Amanda, tell us a little bit about what's happened since you've been gone. I guess the podcast kind of fell off when we had the COVID-19 scares.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of got put aside. But tell us a little bit what's going on now and what's happened in the past and the future.
Oh, I've actually been moving almost constantly. I moved from my parents' house into my RV and into a friend's house for a while and did some delivery during COVID, which was good money during COVID, actually. Then my family decided to kind of like all move to the same area, and then that didn't quite work out. So we're back in town. So I'll be back in the area from now on.
Well, great. Maybe we can get you on some more episodes. Before the podcast started, we were talking about interdimensional and extra-dimensional travels, and you were talking about some episodes that you had when you were a little girl that you think could have been tied back to dimensional travel.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually what I consider my first paranormal experience. So I grew up in Italy, and my family was visiting the island of Capri, and around the edge of the island there's these caves, and you can take tour boats, and you have to like go at low tide and lay down so that you can get into the cave. And so my family took a tour, and we were in one of the boats, and I was seated next to my mom. We're talking like old wooden boats that were just rowed a very short distance into the cave. And then the tour guide turns the flashlight on, and it lights up, and the cave, because the ceiling is granite or some kind of, I don't know, it's white anyway, and then the ocean underneath the whole cave just glows blue. They're called the Blue Caves, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And
is that coming from phosphorus?
No, it's just from the light, the little bit of sunlight that comes in and hits kind of at the bottom. And it's a shallow area, and so it just reflects blue from the ocean.
Oh, okay.
And they turn the flashlight on so you can see it. Just the whole place, it's beautiful.
I've seen those before.
Yeah,
they are beautiful.
Absolutely. And so I was seated next to my mom in this wooden boat, and the guy, I couldn't speak Italian at the time. I was learning. And so I wasn't paying attention to what he said, and he's just talking about the history or whatever. And I look over to the cave wall, and I see like a grating, and it was kind of confusing. Like, why would there be a grating inside of the stone wall? And then there were two men behind it, an older man and a younger man, and the younger man seemed to like be scared. And the older man told him to be quiet or they'll hear you. And I don't even know, to this day, I don't know what language they were speaking, because I don't remember I just remember the message. But I did speak enough Italian to understand that if they were. So I kept pulling on my mom saying, look. And she was just telling me, be quiet, the man's talking. And they were there the entire time we were in the cave, and I was just terrified looking at them because it didn't make sense in my head. And to this day, I'm like, I don't understand what I saw. And the only thing I can explain it is that maybe they were from a different dimension or a different time period that they were seeing in on us, but no one really noticed them, or either no one else saw them. I'm not sure which. So it's unusual.
Did anybody else see these people other than you, or
I kept pulling on my mom for her to look, but she was, listening. We were in like a circle around the guy in the middle, and he was in these were like maybe 5 boats, and he just kept talking, and no one seemed to look over. It was like, it was just in the kind of the the wall of the cave next to me.
Right.
Have you ever Googled just to see if anybody else has had that experience?
No, because I wouldn't even know how to look it up. I'm not sure what to.
I'm not sure, but we'll give that a try.
Yeah, yeah, it was just really weird.
Yeah.
Well, what's your thoughts now about, there's been so much out there on the news about extraterrestrials and spaceships visiting us from other planets and that sort of thing. Especially the government putting it out now, and they're putting out a lot of information that they've kept from us for years. But Ann and I have discussed this, and you're feeling on it too. But Ann and I, we got to think that they're just throwing us something that they want us to hear because there's something in the back door they don't want us to see.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
If you keep your eyes on the front door, then they could sneak in the back door,
Exactly.
and it's not going to bother anybody. But what's your feelings on the when it comes to extra dimensionals rather than extraterrestrials?
It's really hard to say. I mean, they easily could be interdimensional because, like how would you power a spaceship from the other side of the universe to here? Like, that doesn't. It seems insurmountable by almost anything we could imagine.
And I agree. And if you've traveled for billions of miles, why would you just want to stay for a couple of seconds and just disappear?
Right.
Yeah.
And so one of the theories that's been out there that Ann and I have looked at is the fact that if you travel into our dimension, it's regulated by space and time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're actually starting to deteriorate from the day you're born, your body, okay, to say making the simple terms. Mm-hmm. But if they're coming from a dimension that doesn't have this, and they are not, subject to growing old and this sort of thing, that's the reason they can't stay here very long. They come in, do whatever their emotions or their objectives would be, mm-hmm. and then they get out real fast.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what, they just show up and then they disappear.
Well, there's an interesting theory out. I don't know. There's a book written on it at this point, and some other theoretical physicists who believe it could have happened, including I think he's the president of CERN, which is where the Large Hadron Collider is. Mm-hmm. So that collider is for scientific experiments, and they're at 99% the speed of light, throwing these particles around and doing things that we don't know exactly what the repercussions are for our reality. It's like at that level because it's at the quantum level that they're experimenting.
Right.
So CERN was turned on in it's either 16 or 18. And they immediately started doing some pre-experimentation to make sure things were working. And there's the belief that when something happened during that pre-experimental period, that we may have actually crossed into a different dimension. And that could be why we've seen things like COVID-19. We're seeing an increase in extraterrestrial sighting, or what do they call them now?
Yeah.
AEPs or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're seeing like a massive increase in this. And there's the belief by some people that, including scientists, who believe that when CERN did these experiments in the beginning, that something altered with our planet and our reality.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So.
And there were some articles out there, I don't know if you've noticed them in the news the last week or so, but they were talking about that our brain and our, our wavelengths that we use, or they're connected to the whole universe. It's mm-hmm. kind of a universal thing. Mm-hmm. And that now that we're seeing each other in the third dimension, but in the fifth dimension, it's the wavelengths and the sounds, and that we can actually work within the fifth dimension now, rather than just the third dimension where we've always been. But we might be able to go further than we really realize that we can go by, and that's where you get into the theories of, I guess, they can talk to us through their minds and this sort of thing. It's because of the waves that we put off. and they can put off. So, they're controlling their ways where we're not controlling ours right now.
Yeah, that could be very true.
And I would love to, in a future podcast, too, get up with your dad, and they're talking about the supreme being.
Mm-hmm.
And I read an article not too long ago when they were talking about, they were talking about the dimensions, and they're talking about the inner dimension being, and I've spoken this in about every podcast, so please just bear with me, where they look like the earth has got a ring around it, and that is the inner dimensions, and then our solar system, it's got a ring around that, and that's where you get into the extra dimensionals. So anywhere there's something right around us right now that you can almost reach out and touch. It's like another dimension right here close to us. And the other one is one where they travel into from another dimension somewhere in another solar system. They come into our dimension. And he's talking about the supreme person, which would, in our eyes, would be God, okay? He created all these dimensions, and he created a lot of people like us. But he didn't give them the time and space, so they never grew old. And they become gods themselves. So a God doesn't need another God. So they branched out from him. And he created us as more of his children, like God would do, and that we're subject to time and space where we age and we grow old. So this is a way to pull the spirit in and give him a place to dwell for whatever reason we're here on earth. And then we go back to our God or the other dimension. And so, I would like to talk to your dad about that, I'm sure. What's your feelings on that now?
I would say it's very theoretical.
Well, everything's going to be theoretical because we can't prove anything.
Right,
okay?
this is true.
So, everybody's got their own theories, but this one kind of makes more sense than anything I've heard in the past. Mm-hmm. We just kind of have to make up, and we're talking about different things that's happened throughout the whole history of the earth, and there's always been a spaceman in our history, mm-hmm. or another dimensional, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But you go all the way back to prior to their religious, back in Greek mythology and
ancient history
and everything. There's always been a spacecraft or another dimensional.
Right.
So it's just kind of makes more sense than somebody traveling all through the universe just to stay here for a little while and go back home for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think that history does definitely confirm, at least for me, it confirms. It'd be hard to scientifically prove it, but it confirms the paranormal for me because there's recorded paranormal experiences as far back, like including what we consider religious experiences.
Right.
There's always that sense of the paranormal.
Right. And that's, and everybody goes back to the Bible, and we're talking about the Holy Ghost, and there's always been some person speaking of the paranormal, even in the Bible.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it makes you kind of wonder what's going on. But
mm-hmm.
that's the reason we're here. We're just looking at all the facts and taking all this in.
Asking the questions.
And another thing is they were talking about the spirits. They believe that they might be in another dimension and can come back through.
That's kind of what I believe. That ghosts and what we experience as the paranormal is just a different dimension. And I think it can be different things because I think like some people experience, like the Conjuring house, and the Perron family. And if you read her books, the conclusion she came to with her family was that they weren't seeing ghosts, they were seeing into a different time period.
Right.
And she said that she believes that house was built over a portal for multiple dimensions. And so they would see different time periods because they were seeing people from like the 1600s to the 1700s to the 1800s. And that house had been there the whole time. It was built back in the 1600s.
Right.
And so like their experiences, they even say, were not ghosts, they were extra dimensions that they were experiencing.
And to me, that makes a whole lot more sense than just Now, I know that we've been able to see energy and they can create energy, but maybe they just can't hold it in this dimension for very long. And that's the reason
And I
that things
wonder,
happen.
I'm sorry, I wonder if, like, there are different dimensions, like what we consider like residual energy, where you're just seeing something that you can't interact with, but you're seeing it.
Right.
So that may be one dimension. It may be that recently departed loved ones are in a different dimension that does allow them to visit occasionally, so that we can still experience them. And it could be, you know, that all these different categories of ghosts or poltergeists, it could be just multiple dimensions that
Right.
we're experiencing.
And that would go back on the theory that we're in a time and space scenario, and they coming back can't survive in a time and space because they're there forever in that dimension. So they can only stay here for a short period of time and then go back to their whatever dimension that they're in. So this has just opened so many doors that we can look at.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to me. Anne did an interesting podcast last week. You want to talk about that just a little bit, Anne, about the girl from Spain?
Yeah, her name was Lorena. I can't remember. Maybe Gonzalez, and her last name was Gordo. And she said that she woke up in a different dimension. The things that made her think this were like her sheets when she woke up were different. Her boyfriend was different. Her sister hadn't had a surgery that she thought she had, and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
things
when
were
she
just
got to
totally
work,
different.
her office was in a different location than where
Exactly.
she was the day before.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Here's the letter. I wrote it. I read it last week, and I just said that would be so scary to me. I feel like that would be so frightening to wake up and everything's just one off. You know,
Yeah.
I'd feel very lost.
But she was kind of hesitant to tell her story because she thought everybody would think she was crazy.
Exactly.
So I was just wondering how many other episodes out there that people think, yeah, I'm crazy.
And they just never share it.
Yeah. Wow. But it was really interesting that there was a parallel interesting. That would be an interdimensional if there ever was one.
Yeah.
So.
And my skeptic brain makes me think, well, what if she is a little crazy? What if this is just her perception? Maybe she was having a mental breakdown and woke up the next morning and just remembered things differently.
I would argue the fact that I could see that if it was one or two things.
Gotcha.
You know, if it was the sheets or I can't see the boyfriend. I mean, that just doesn't make any common sense at all. But, we're not talking about common sense here anyway.
I don't know if that could possibly be the results of
yeah,
a stroke or I don't know.
I mean, I could just, like I said, if you narrowed it down to one or two things, then maybe I'm kind of questioning, your mental ability there. But when you got so much that's different, and she could explain things too well to just, she could describe her old office, and then she goes to this new office, and she doesn't know anything about it. And somebody's in her old office, which she described. So, there's some...
I think I would have probably, if I was her family, asked her to go and get checked for dissociative identity disorder, just to make sure that there's not other personalities in there.
Right. And I think she did go to a doctor, though, didn't
I think she did, but I doubt he did a thorough test.
Oh, I agree with that one. So.
That's crazy.
That is.
So, Amanda, have you had any experiences over the last couple of years that stands out more than anything else because of your ability to intertwine with what I'm saying now might be dimensionals?
Yeah. So, like I was telling you before the podcast, I just had open heart surgery. So I've been in the hospital like 3 big times in the last few years where I was admitted and everything. And the first one, I was having some trouble sleeping, but they didn't want to give me anything to make me sleep. So I was tossing and turning a lot, and finally fell into a really deep sleep. And then, like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 hours passed, and I woke up standing next to the bed, and I was talking to this girl who was translucent, and she was in my bed. And she said something funny that made me laugh, and then she just disappeared. And I ended up calling the nurse in, like, I don't know, am I sleepwalking? She's like, you seem to be fully awake. And I was like, I just saw this, and they're like, you're not well. Go back to bed. But
of course, they're all going to say that.
They just dismiss it, and so I've learned not to say anything when I see it.
Yeah.
So that was the first time, and it was just so odd. And I don't know who this girl ever was. She was just, I could see she had like stringy blonde hair. She was thin, definitely younger than me, and had a hospital gown on. And we were having a conversation, and she just disappeared on me.
That's funny you say that, because if you'd had that same conversation in a hospital in the Middle East, they would have believed you.
Oh, yeah.
And they would have comforted you.
I think a lot of countries, they would have believed me.
But in the United States,
we're science.
That's our kids don't do things like that. They have a friend.
Yeah,
they just have a friend.
Well, I ended up having 2 more experiences. The second time I was in the hospital, I woke up in the morning. Thankfully, they're learning to let you sleep in hospitals these days. So they weren't, they were letting me sleep 6 or 7 hours. So I woke up, and it was morning, and I had 2 large windows across the wall. And I just looked over toward the window, and I could see the profile of a lady, and her shoulder and about down to her waist. And that's all I could see of her. And there was like sparkles all around her. And she just smiled and disappeared. And I had a friend who was interested in the paranormal, was always asking me questions. And she's like, did you have any weird experiences in the hospital? And I was like, well, yeah, I saw this lady. And I described her. And she goes, that sounds like my mother. So she pulls out a photo. And it looked like the lady. And she goes, I was praying for my mom to watch over you in the hospital and for her to look out for you. And I was like, oh, wow. So I was like, well, she took good care of me.
Yeah. And luckily, you have the ability, whether you've got the spectrum in your eye, like they're saying now.
Yeah, maybe.
You can see things that other people can't see, and we'll do a podcast on that one too, talking about the light and
okay.
Because that would be a good podcast, because some people can see ghosts and some people can't, and so that's where that goes. But you've been very fortunate. You can feel and see things.
Yeah.
I can see things every once in a while, but I don't get the feeling that you do. You can kind of absorb them.
Yeah, I have to be careful, because I can feel things like all the time if I allow it, and I have to like actually block it at times, because I'll just end up like carelessly feeling more than I want to, or seeing things that I don't necessarily want to see where I want to see them.
Right, and I believe that if the entity finds somebody that can do that, they'll come after them a whole lot more than they do the normal person.
It's like they know that you're going to be able to see them and interact with them.
Right. My oldest daughter, she really she would love to see a ghost. Okay, she's never been able to see one. She's never been able to I guess feel one or see the aftermath of one. But some people can't do it. I don't know if it's true. I think she would be open to it. I don't know for a fact, but you've got to be able to look and see things and feel things that you don't think's normal. And if you start trying to make it normal, it's not going to be.
Yeah, it's something that you can't force, and you also can't prevent if it is going to happen. But I think I think most people are closed off to the idea, and so they don't see things. But I think if you're open and you let the universe know that I'm open to seeing these things. Like, my rule is nothing in my house. No, I don't want to see anything. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to experience nothing in my house. So that's my rule. Nothing good, nothing bad.
But yeah,
But
my wife has said many times, she said, you go out and investigate all you want to, don't bring anything home.
Exactly.
So,
See, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I think I've seen something once, but I think that I've always kind of blocked everything out.
yes, that's what
To
I'm
keep
saying.
myself from
You're
being
overthinking
afraid.
it. Right, you're
Yeah.
overthinking it.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't want to see anything in my house. I'm like, even if it were something benign, I would interpret it as scary. Even if it was my grandma or something.
Exactly.
I might, give me a jump scare.
Right. And remember Bruce going out and buying all those things that had spirits attached to them and brought them
Yeah.
into his house?
That's not good. That's not a good idea.
He was scouring the internet for cursed objects,
Yeah.
haunted objects.
And he was bringing them into his house. I think I don't know whatever happened to that. We got to talk to him about that
Yeah.
sometime. So.
Well, I've told you this before, Daryl. I think that you can go to Goodwill and get a lot of things that have spirits attached to them because somebody owned those.
Well, I agree. But sometimes things that are attached to it, you don't want to own.
No.
You don't want a doll that's going to talk to you badly
I
in
don't
the
want a
middle
doll,
of the night.
period.
If
Dolls
she
creep
talks
me
at
out.
all, she's going outside to the garbage can.
Now that's my oldest daughter. She definitely her name's Suzanne, and she's never liked dolls.
Yeah.
And yeah,
They're creepy.
Yeah, they are. I don't know. Being a guy, I never had that problem. So. G.I. Joe never bothered me. So. But I'm glad that you had some good experiences in the hospital.
Yeah, nothing negative.
So it was that a local hospital or was that
Yeah,
some-
Baptist.
Baptist?
Okay.
Okay.
Atrium Baptist,
Okay,
all
that's-
3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last time, real quick, was this last time when I had open heart surgery, and I knew they had to stop my heart, so I was worried that something would happen during the surgery that I would, I don't know, leave my body, but nothing happened then. I spent 3 days in ICU, and that's when I was like heavily medicated, and they were trying to get the pain under control and everything. So I came out of that, and then it was just a matter of making sure I was recovering. And so I was in a normal room, and the shades were like partially opened, so sunlight was coming in. But I kept seeing like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like pops of light were just filtering through my room, just going upwards, going straight up through the ceiling. It was like they were coming through the floor and going straight up. And like I was like, I wonder if those are people who are passing away, maybe. But it was just a lot of like little pops of light just floating up through the ceiling. It was really, it was beautiful. I was transfixed by it.
Before the podcast, we were talking about, I can see the light around a person. There. It was funny you said that because when I was looking at Anne, and I seen that Anne was pretty calm. She was just ready. You were a little bit uptight when you first come in here. But I saw sparkles of light around you, and I've never seen sparkles of light around anybody before. And when you said that, I'm going, holy crap.
Well, maybe some came with me. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they're not mean night. I mean, it's just, I've never seen sparkles before, but I
Yeah.
could tell you were a little uptight. Now you're very relaxed.
Yeah.
So it's funny how people react to different things. I can see. I've got one daughter. I won't say which area she's in, age-wise, that is. But I've got one. Her she stays red a lot, and a lot of it, I think, it's pressure from work. So she's really always tense, and it seems like the more that you're tense and more that you're worried about something, the light almost comes. It's an orangish red light. If you know what I'm saying, I can't explain it.
Sure.
But the more worried you are, the brighter red it gets. And then when it starts going into orange, I kind of feel like you're in a neutral. Then you go to white and sometimes blue. Blue is, I see that a lot with when I'm watching my wife to see if she's really sleepy or not, I'll look at her and then kind of focus in on her, and I can see she's starting to turn blue. I know she's ready for bed. But she's real funny too, because she worries. She's a worry wart, I guess. And I see a lot of her change, and she changes constantly.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a flashing light on her. Just it'll keep changing. But a lot of people just stay calm a lot, and some of them stay up tense a lot. So you just never know.
Yeah.
You never know. So we've got some neighbors around here that I don't try to watch everybody, because I don't want to do that. It's kind of like you. It can get overwhelming after a while, you know. I can walk up and say, "What's your problem?" Because you really got one. So, but I try not to do that. But we've got some down here that they stay calm most of the time. I can tell when they're getting upset. When I think these are more medical issues that's causing them to get upset. And I worry about that sort of thing, you know, especially if I know them really well.
Yeah.
So, and talking about my dad, 95 years old,
Is
still
he
farms
really?
every day.
Oh my gosh.
He gets out there and farms, and he goes, and I'm telling you, he stays the calmest. His aura is so calm that just being around him calms you down.
Yeah.
And I just
It's
can't
good to have
believe
people
it.
like
Yeah.
that.
I when my brother had cancer, I saw him get upset a lot. And my mother had Alzheimer's many years ago, and I could see him getting upset a lot. But right now, he's just as calm. He says he's going to live to be 140, and I believe him. He goes out on Friday night and does his dancing. And I did set him down last week, I believe it was. Maybe it was last week. And I recorded him talking about the 1930s and the 1940s.
Oh, wow.
And he was born in 27, I believe. So he told me a lot about the 1930s, and he lived in Patrick County, Virginia, and about going to the beach, going to somewhere on the beach of Virginia. And he was telling about the covered wagon. I mean, not the covered wagon, but the covered pickup truck. They were using an old-timey 30s model truck.
Yeah.
And his dad built that truck to carry the kids to school, because they didn't have school buses back then. So he built them. He was fortunate enough to own a truck, and he built a big bed on the back of it and put a cover on it and everything.
Pile them in.
And, and he piled the kids in and take them to school. So
I bet he's got some stories.
Yeah, I'd
he
love
did.
to hear those.
Yeah, I've got them recorded.
I want to sit with my mom and my uncle and have them tell me about their childhood and
Yeah.
what was going on in the 40s and 50s.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I've never really spoken to Dad about the paranormal or anything like that. I don't know. Dad's really a religious man, and he's heavily into the Bible. So, a person that goes for the written word of the Bible, it's hard to them to perceive anything other than what they're looking at and reading. And I'm definitely not going to try to change the mind of a 95-year-old. It's just not going to work. But, it's very interesting that you were talking about the spirits coming to you in the hospital, the good spirits, and looking over you and things like that. So
Yeah, nothing negative.
it's always comforting to know that you got somebody right there watching after you too.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So did that help you when you heard that? You felt like you were being comforted?
Yeah, I honestly had such a good experience from when they were doing testing, and you had to get in the MRI, or not the MRI, the one where you go through the donut.
Where it sounds like a trash can
Yeah.
around you.
Yeah,
Is that a CAT
I had to
scan?
go through that thing, and I was just scared
Yeah.
in general. It's medical stuff.
Yeah.
And I had my head down, just waiting for them to call me, and felt my grandmother and my uncle, who recently passed away, just lay their hands on me, and I could sense their presence, and I felt comforted just from that. And then just the positive experiences. It was a situation where I could have been terrified. I just had open heart surgery. It was an emergency, and We didn't know what was going on, and they fixed everything perfectly, and I just couldn't have had a better experience.
I understand, yeah. And, you know, some of our investigations going forward, I'd love for you to go with us too. And I know this is sometimes uncomfortable for you. I think you went with us out there near Blues Creek that time, right?
Yeah.
With the, whatever that was.
That was a
you were talking about
strange one.
portals. That, everything seemed to come out of that closet. It's
Yeah.
like
They wanted me to
horror movie or
spend
something.
like 5 to 10 minutes alone in the room just to see if I felt it. I lasted, I think, 2.5 minutes. I
Yeah,
was like,
she was very
I was
uncomfortable.
hearing things. I felt like something was behind me. I was like, no, can't do it.
Why was it necessary for you to be alone as opposed to just having somebody in there for comfort?
Just to like block everything out. I wasn't expecting it to be negative,
Okay.
but there was you felt it as well. It was a negative
I've never been
energy.
in a house like that. And the people there, I guess they're still there.
They didn't want us
They
to
didn't-
cleanse
yeah.
it. Nothing.
They wouldn't have left like
They
that.
like their ghosts.
Whatever.
I know one
He pulls
was
cover off of them. He does a lot of pranks.
Oh, I don't like
but-
that.
one was the lady's mother, and I kept seeing this lady laying over the coffee table laughing at us. And I was like, we were doing the podcast, and I was like, hold on, I'm seeing something behind me. And like, I turned around and I was like, I keep seeing this lady, and she's just laughing at us. And they were like, oh, that's our mother's ashes on the table in that urn. And I was like, oh, that kind of explains it. They were like, oh yeah, she would have thought this was hilarious and just made fun of us for it. So that was like the only positive energy there. The rest
everything
was
else
so
was negative.
I mean, they were seeing things crawling on the ceiling. It could have been some poltergeist from their teenage daughter who did not want us there.
Yeah.
It was really odd situation.
Because Bruce and I kept feminists, whatever it was, going into that bedroom where they were at.
Yeah.
And then it would come back out. But
And you actually saw it, or you saw it on your camera?
we saw it on the cameras.
Okay.
Yeah, then we focused in and we kind of narrowed it down to a closet that was in the lady's bedroom. And it seems like everything was generating out of that closet. So
Okay.
it was, like I said, it was like a episode of Outer Limits or something.
Yeah.
I kept telling them, like, you got to get this place cleansed. And they were like, oh, maybe. And then the last time I asked them, they were like, no, we're okay with it. And I'm just like, I would not be raising my kid around such negative energy.
Well, I think if I had negative energies in my home, but my mom was also there, I would just have to suck it up and deal with it because I wouldn't want to let her go,
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but she'll
you
take
could
you
invite her
picked her
back.
ashes up and took her with you.
Well, that's true. But if, I cleansed and her spirit had to go, I would.
Yeah.
I would just let her
And I
stay.
understand that, but these people didn't feel anything. They had the results of the negative is like pulling the cover off, and didn't she get? There was something else. That
I
was,
can't remember. They were experiencing a lot of stuff.
I've seen. Go back and listen to the podcast.
I'm very much anticipating going on a investigation.
Yeah, I think our first one going back is we're going to go back out there and see if Sherry let us back in her house
Gotcha.
and stay for a little while, because that's the one that we've got the positive energy where she materializes in front of more than one person.
All right.
So I know that person, and plus when I was in there, were you there that
I
night?
never got to go there.
Okay, I didn't think so. But that night, I had the experience of when I went in that bathroom, and of course, I went there to relieve myself. Is that okay to say? But anyway, I didn't take a camera with me. So as soon as I started back out the door, that's when that little toy shaving can, they keep, kids there, and so they have little toys.
Yeah.
But it looked like just a miniature shaving can, a kid's thing that you would have in a kit or something like that for kids.
Yeah.
That came off the counter and slung across the wall and hit the wall above the toilet and fell down in the floor.
Yeah. See, I don't feel anything. I don't see anything. But if that happened to me, I would talk to it. I would say, you better knock it off.
Well, we went back in there and we saw 3 entities in there that night, and we tried to get them to do it again, but apparently it takes a lot of energy to move something.
Yeah.
and I don't know if you remember it or not, but we did the asked him who are you, and all of our batteries went dead. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then he said, "Hi, Daryl, I'm Jimmy."
Yeah.
So and that was on the tape recorders that the batteries were dead on, and we finally put new batteries in it when we got home, and we heard that, but nobody heard it that night when we were there, and we were right next to that room.
It's an EVP, right?
Yeah. So, but it was just as plain as day. Hi, Daryl, Jimmy.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Yeah. So it was, it's things like that shows me that there is something. Okay, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I guess you could, but you can if you got evidence, and that's evidence. And what I can't understand is you watch these guys on Ghostbusters and whatever that TV program is. They go in and spend hours looking for something. They don't come out with nothing. We spent a night and got enough to make a whole year's series on a TV show.
Exactly.
But we just happened to get into a really active location. Mm-hmm. Now that family is very much doesn't want to move because they, this little girl or whoever the entity is takes care of them, flipping on lights, open doors. I told you it was his brother or cousin or somebody was going out the door and the door opened for him. Yeah. He went outside and he said he's never coming back in again. His hands were full, so the door opened for him. Yeah. He says, "I'm never going back in that house again." But those are the ones that I really and I love to go back out there and just do a second episode of years later.
Yeah.
What's going on now? Mm-hmm. So we'll do that one. And we're talking about the devil's stomping grounds. Like Bruce wants to go out there and do that and spend the night out there on the ground.
Yeah, no, I've heard that is a private property, so we would probably, I think that the owners live on the road that it's on.
I don't know.
So we'd have to just, but when I saw that it was a private property, I think it was a TikTok I was watching, and they said that they just drove and told the owners that they were going to go out there.
Yeah. I know people have been out there, so you got to be able to go out there.
Yeah.
And another one is that town where they filmed that movie.
Yeah, the Hunger Games.
Yeah, it was filmed in that town. The cast there and some of the tech people left, wouldn't come back because of the spirits in that area. It's an old town. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to go back out there too. I think Bruce wants to go back out there. And then, like I said, I hadn't spoken to Bruce in quite a while, so I'm going to try to get up with him and talk to him for a little bit.
All right. I'm ready for any of them.
Okay, Amanda, is there anything else you'd like to add tonight? Because I'd love to have you back if you would come back to see us.
I did write down a ghost story that I thought, well, it's Halloween coming up.
Sure, let's do it.
I can tell you that one. And this happened to me in Hollywood, and for me, it was the most haunted place I lived. And it's kind of what woke me up to like, oh my gosh, you're experiencing this on a regular basis. Like, you definitely need to be aware of it.
Is that the one with your husband was there too?
He wasn't. He was working when most of these things happened. I
think I've heard this one, but yeah, please.
Okay, so it was an apartment in Hollywood in one of the older buildings, and we had moved in just right after we got married, and so like when we first moved there, I was already kind of apprehensive of kept feeling like, oh, I don't want to go down this hallway. And I would end up getting stuck either in the living room. He would be gone for the whole time. And I had just moved to California, so I wasn't working. And so he was gone, 7 in the morning till 6 at night, sometimes later. And I would get stuck either in the living room or in the bedroom for the entire day because I would not walk down this hallway. And he was just like, well, what would make you feel better? So we got pepper spray, but I was like, but this isn't something coming in from outside. There's something here. And things would move, or it would, you would think, oh, maybe I did leave it there, but I'm almost positive I didn't move it to that room or something. So we were seeing some of that happen, and it was like things were increasing. And then I started spending a lot of time in the bedroom just for convenience because the bathroom was there and I could spend the whole day there. And I would hear things going on in the kitchen. And this is a small, 500 square foot apartment. It's not big. And my husband was like, no, you're hearing the people upstairs. And I was like, this is during the workday, and it's in the kitchen. Like, I know the difference when the neighbor's moving chairs across the floor,
Right.
or cleaning. I could even hear him cleaning. I knew what he was doing. I knew his sounds. But this was happening in the kitchen, where I would hear like a plate fall on the floor. And there would never be anything out of place, though. But I was hearing all these things. And so eventually we were going to be moving to a different apartment. And we were swimming. It was the last weekend we were going to be there. And I was like, I have to use the bathroom. And he was like, well, we're right down the hall. Go ahead and go back to the apartment. And I was like, I'm not going alone. And he was like, come on. And I was like, I'm not going by myself. He was like, well, then you're going to have to pee your pants because I'm not going with you. He's like, he was laying in the sun. He's not getting up. So I was like, okay, I can do this. So I go back to my apartment, close the door behind me, and you go to the bathroom. And then it sounded like all hell broke loose in our kitchen. Like cabinets slamming open and slamming shut, plates falling onto the floor and smashing. And I was convinced somebody had come in because I knew I didn't lock the door.
Right.
So I was like, oh no, somebody followed me in and they don't know I'm in here. And so the only thing I could find was like a hairspray bottle and a lighter that was in there. And I was like, I can make a blowtorch. So I'm standing there and I'm like, I have to go back out. I have to,
here now.
like, I don't even have a phone with me. So how am I going to get past this person? So I'm like, I run down the hallway and I'm ready to light my blowtorch. And there's nothing out of place in that kitchen. And like nothing was disturbed. The door's closed. There's nothing. And I just heard a voice of like a lady right behind me at my shoulder. And she just said, I just wanted to be noticed. And I flew out of there and I was like, we're leaving in 2 days. I'm not going to be alone in there.
Well, she was noticed, right?
She was noticed, yeah. So
Oh, wow.
So I wonder how you break plates in another dimension so it can be heard in this.
I have no idea. No idea.
Wow. That was a great story.
It was.
And you have anything else tonight? Or
I'm just processing that because I believe I may have came out and went on down because I'm pretty brave.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I may have just stayed in the bathroom and he would
I
have
was in
eventually
there for
came
a
and
while.
got me.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank y'all so much for coming to the podcast tonight.
Thanks for having me back on. This has been
It's
fun.
been great having you.
Yes, I hope we get to have you much more often.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Guys, that's pretty much our podcast tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed it. So until next week, thank you for listening to Mothman Podcast. Good night.
Good night.
Take care.